Next up, Jim LeClaire. Jim and Patty LeClaire owned and operated the Maine Coast Welcome Center in Belfast for 5 years, directing travelers to places to stay, places to eat, and things to do. Smart DataMap Services, their new business, pinpoints business information and locations on smart maps so travelers can find and navigate their way to businesses. Help me welcome Jim LeClaire.
Hi folks, I'm from Belfast. We're going to talk a little bit about how Bucksport shows up to travelers. So Bucksport has changed quite a bit, and we're going to show how it used to look and what it's going to look like as the future moves forward, and how we can be smart about the changes that are being demonstrated to people that are traveling. Bucksport has got a very interesting history because back in the 1890s, it was quite a hub for tourism. You actually had a train station, steamboat wharf, all kinds of shipyards along the waterfront, and even Buck Cemetery, which was there at that point in time, is still popular today. The way maps evolved is that they were the stories of travelers that visited the area. So these travelers took a long time to visit the area and write down their recollections of what the area looked like and include points of interest that they would show to other people. These records and diaries got handed over to people called cartographers, which was a very, very fastidious, very, very smart task to take all this information that the travelers had recorded and put it onto a map. There was a lot of intelligence there. As maps evolved with time, they evolved relatively slowly, and they started adding things like color. They added things like the bridge used to be a toll bridge here in Bucksport, put it in the state park. But generally, maps changed pretty slowly. So the format for map distribution back in the early days was a paper map. So we all remember the map that we got at, they actually used to be free at these places called service stations. And Dad would write all these kinds of notes on the map and put that in the that would be the holy grail for the travelers. As digital maps came along and computers came along, they wanted to get these maps off the paper into digital format. And they scanned the paper maps into the computers. The trouble was they scanned away all the native intelligence that was on that piece of paper. It was a big problem. Google tried to fix this by making computer maps. And they again used robots and offshore digitizing to try to impart information onto these maps. And now they were trying to distinguish what made one map more interesting to travelers than another map. Because all these maps end up on the smartphones to the travelers. And all these different applications show different pictures of Bucksport, and what they try to differentiate themselves is why does one application appear more popular than another one. And the reason that one tries to look more popular is they put on these things called points of interest. This is one place where the maps really get screwed up, is because quantity of points of interest started taking over from the quality of the information. And they'd sell these maps based on how many points of interest were there. The way the points of interest got generated was they started using robots, databots. And databots are software that goes out and searches for information about an area and tries to populate it as a point of interest onto a map. So what they look for is information that used to be in things like the white pages. This is a data record for Bucksport that lists businesses in one of the primary data records that have the name Bucksport in them. And you can see there's a whole bunch of them. So the data bot looks at this and says, oh, that's a point of interest, and I'm going to throw it onto a map. The trouble is, he's not too smart. So when we ask the data bot to look for the Alamo, for example, he sees the Alamo in all kinds of different places on internet maps and GPSs all across the internet. So we say, okay, where is the Alamo? This next slide will show where the Alamo looks like it is. And you can see there's a little problem going on here because the Alamo is scattered all over Bucksport. And this is a real problem when it comes down to a traveler that's visiting this area trying to find a beautiful facility like this. The problem is the data bot is really, really dumb. All he does is grab points of interest and try to throw them onto a map. So what we're trying to do is put the intelligence back into the maps. So where are we going to get the intelligence for the maps? The business owner is still the one that knows the most about the information about the area in their particular business. When we data map a business, all these fields of information that we can put in comes from the business owner. And we can take that information so that make sure that the location is right, the description is right, and all the fields of information. Because what happens, this is the modern traveler. Every person in the car has at least one smart device, and this is what they're looking at to see what Bucksport looks like when they're traveling. It's pretty confusing. So we're working with the Chamber of Commerce to actually control the display that these folks see. So what we're going to do is we're going to put all the chamber members on a smart map that has the correct information and location on a map that will be distributed electronically. Each of these maps will show points of interest, and then they can be linked to things like a logo, a graphical image, and even like web links. For example, the web link that we'll use for the Chamber of Commerce will show all the events that are going on. So a traveler, when they're passing through the area, they say, hey, look at all the wonderful things to do in Bucksport. So if you're interested, contact the Chamber and work with us in making a real modern, accurate representation of what Bucksport looks like to the travelers coming to this area.